happened to your hair?
I don't know. I was just playing with it, and then
It looks very different. I feel like you're some sort of boy band, like from the 90s or something.
all right, we're gonna roll with it today. We're gonna roll
We're
with
just
it like
gonna roll with
this.
it.
We're just gonna
I don't even know.
roll
I'm
with
trying
it.
to think of like what it reminds me of, but
Oh,
it also makes me just want to shave your head.
oh, really? Wow. Well, you know what? I would love some touch. So, I mean, I would not
I
oblige. I
just,
would be happy to oblige to
oh my
limited
gosh. Okay,
contact.
sorry everyone.
Let's get physical,
Yeah,
physical.
we start off with
Oh,
such
rest in peace, ONJ.
strange tangents.
Oh, I know. How
Welcome to
are
Getting
you? Well,
Juicy.
yes,
Lots of singing, it
indeed.
seems like.
Welcome to Jewcy. Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. Today I just want to jump right into our guest
Please
because
do.
we have an extra juicy guest because she comes from the Jewish community. So we don't have, not all of our guests are Jewish. I would say actually the majority of them are not.
Probably about
Um,
20%
maybe about 20%
at the
are.
most. Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps. But I just want to preface, I guess, this particular guest or episode with the fact that you do not need to be Jewish in order to get something out of this. And with what our guest is, her experiences and what she's gone through and her accolades, and also just, well, really her experience. I mean, I feel like a lot of people can relate, more specifically, maybe women. So Leah Lax is her name.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Leah, I believe she'll be calling in from New York, I think.
Okay.
And Leah, when she was 15 years old, decided to become a part of the Hasidic community. So I'd like her to give her definition of Hasidic Jew because, you can go on the internet and find out exactly what that means. But basically, it is one of the most conservative, I don't know, what do you want to say? Conservative communities, conservative,
Maybe
what
one of the most observant practices of Judaism.
practices of Judaism. Yeah, exactly. But
The
also like
traditions.
very traditional, very conservative, and
Yeah.
very much just sticking to that particular community. So, if you've seen somewhere in your community where there are, those that are wearing the yarmulkes, the little hats on the back of their heads, and you see, women maybe with long, they're wearing usually long black skirts or dresses, and they may even not even realize it, the women are actually wearing wigs as well. And for the most part, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I'd like her to explain all this, but basically she decided to become a part of this community for 30 years. And then at the age of 45, I believe, decided to leave that community after really realizing how suppressed she was as a human, not just as a woman, as a human. Basically, she wrote this award-winning book called Uncovered, or Uncovered How, oh my goodness, I just left the rest of the book. Uncovered How I Left Hasidic Life and Finally Came Home.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So another thing is she discovered that she is gay too.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, and the reason why Hero's also surprised, we do research on our guests.
We do, yes.
But our shtick also is that we like to learn from our guests really in real time as to who they are, because you can do so much research and, then kind of go by a playbook almost of questions that perhaps they're so used to hearing. And I think that sometimes when you do a lot of research and you start to kind of get all your ducks in a row, it becomes a little too structured, and that's just not really us. So yeah. So, imagine being in a community where, especially, and I'll talk about women, and there's a lot of religions and communities out there in the world like this, where it's kind of like, this is your duty, this is your job, you cannot stray from that. You're a woman.
Yeah.
You have a prearranged marriage. You have children. You cook the meals. And the other thing with this Hasidic community, no internet, no all this for 30 years, and denying, who she truly I actually just was
It's no
watching
internet at all, like not even.
nothing, hero. Did
Oh
you not know
wow.
that about? Yeah, nothing,
No, no, I
nothing.
didn't know that.
No contact with the world in that form.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a really, for a lack of better word for, I guess, just because of how we've lived, bizarre. I mean, it's complete like 180 from how we've lived our lives, especially as, I don't know, put in quotations, Jews, because Hero and
Hmm.
I are very ishy.
We
We're
are
very
very
ishy Jews.
issue.
It's like it's kind of like in our DNA, and it's culturally like what's been passed down. It's our
We honor our
ancestors,
ancestry.
and right, exactly, but we don't practice,
No.
so now we're going to the complete other side of the spectrum, essentially.
Hmm. That's
um
right.
Talking to Leah and her experiences, which were like the complete opposite to that. So
Hmm.
but just imagine, like, just speaking from the LGBTQ plus side of things, being in this for 30 years, but
Hmm.
knowing and being forced to marry a man, having children. But that's,
Wow.
can you
Yeah.
imagine? Like,
No.
and I was just watching something, just the last thing I'll say, and I'm, I really just want her to take the reins and go with this, but just, she was saying something about, she had this dream, and how did she put it? Like, erotic fantasies in her dream. It was while she was in the community still. And she remembers in the dream that she was having sex with a woman,
Mm.
and she thought, like, I don't want to butcher this or paraphrase it poorly, but something along the lines of waking up and thinking, well, I must have been a man in my dream to have been having sex with a woman.
Okay.
There's no way that I would have, like, a woman on a woman. No way. Right. And then
Hmm.
just feeling very guilty about that. So, yeah, oh my gosh, I have so many questions, so many questions.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We'll definitely
But
have to dive into where she's comfortable talking about it.
yeah. So, in any case, so this is, I think she's very comfortable. And I've seen her, some of her stuff that she, she does a lot of talks, and just really about empowering other women too.
Hmm.
But what's very current about her is that very shortly, and I'll get this episode out ASAP, in the next couple of weeks, there's actually an opera that has been written about this, her, pretty much based on the book, I should say, and
Oh,
about her
cool.
life in New York. So we'll be at blah, 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 blah. I'm sure if you just Googled Uncovered, if you're in the New York area, Uncovered Opera, but it's actually, oh, here it goes, at the City Lyric Opera
Okay.
in New York. Yeah. So really quite interesting. I wonder if they'll record that. I'd love to see it. Yeah. So that's, yeah, just, did you ever watch that series that I recommended to you to watch? But I don't know, excuse me, if you did. I just ate some tortilla chips. Sorry, guys.
Mm.
Um, Unorthodox
No, I still
on
haven't watched
Netflix.
it. I still haven't
Okay.
watched it, but I know it's
Okay.
supposed to be amazing.
Yeah. And that's, I guess the relevancy, or for people that perhaps aren't really familiar with this realm, this kind of what we're going to be talking about, there, and I do want to ask her opinion on that particular series, and how, is it sensationalized? Is it really that, is it, does it make sense and kind of parallel her experience? Is it,
Hmm.
is it well done? But Unorthodox on Netflix, if you haven't watched it, basically kind of does summarize or put in a nutshell, what, and follows a woman's journey as to what she experienced in that community.
Got
So
it.
yeah. So there you go. That was my long-winded um introduction to Leah, who will be popping on pretty soon.
Yeah, no, I think it was very thorough and concise, well summarized, especially for folks who might be not even more ishy than us, etc. So, no, that's fantastic. I'm glad that we have the ability to connect with Leah and to learn about her story and what she's been doing, where she wants to go, and yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah,
Yay, Rachel.
yay, Rachel. Oh,
Well,
thanks.
for summarizing that so beautifully, yeah.
um yeah, it's so interesting because we have been basically so exposed on the opposite side of internet in our faces, social media obsessed. I'm just going to say, our society is obsessed, like, to, again, other side of the coin, so to speak, with someone like Leah, like herself, where it was like none of that at all for years. I mean, I know
Right.
now she's been out of the community, I think now for 12 or 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, but one thing I thought of, to me, it almost is like there's some parallel between, it's almost like she was born again, sort of, or like everything was new.
Yeah.
And we've had guests on the show who, in the trans community, who, basically have been, were living a certain way and then just realized that's not me. And as they were going through their transition into themselves, it's like, well, that also is a rebirth. So I wonder, it's like this, I mean, that's kind of far-fetched, I guess, parallel, but kind of just some of the things she was talking about kind of reminded me of some of our past guests in just completely different sort of scope. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And it's more than one as well. It's a couple different kind of revivals.
Yeah. Yes. Hi,
Leah.
Leah.
How's it going?
Well, you guys didn't know, none of us knew when we scheduled this that you'd be speaking with someone who was from Houston tonight.
Oh,
really?
Isn't that funny? Because it's funny because even just before I said, oh, she's popping in from New York, right? And then, oh, that's so funny. So what's the time? What time is it there?
It's 2 hours ahead, right?
Where are you?
That's a good question.
We're in the West Coast and on Pacific time, so 6 o'clock.
We're 2 hours ahead of you. It's 8 o'clock, and it's an hour, or it's an inning into the game.
Yes.
And I just watched McCullers give up 4 runs, so I didn't mind walking away.
There you go.
See, we're Canadian, so I don't even know what game you're talking about. I don't even.
Major League Baseball.
This is the World Series.
Oh, there is the World Series happening. Okay.
And the Houston Astros are playing the World Series.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Right?
thank you for giving us your precious time.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. If you
Thank
have
you
to
for
like
giving me a break from that game.
Oh, you're welcome. We're happy to have you. We're so excited.
That's the Houston pitcher. I just watched a Houston pitcher give up 4 runs. It's like, let me out of here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, and it's funny. Okay, we're totally off tangent in a way, but whatever, it doesn't matter. That's just life. But speaking of, because I grew up, I was born in Toronto, and I grew up like, the Blue Jays. I mean, we only really have there's only one Canadian Major League team, right? So I am familiar, but
I know you're from Toronto because you say Toronto.
Toronto. Well, we're also, I guess, because of Canadians with our little accents.
That's right. They are little accents, especially in the West.
Yes. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, Leah. And we're already recording. So we always like to let our guests know, just in case, I love your background too. Look at that.
Yeah, it's perfect.
We've got a ladder. How many stories is that bookshelf?
Well, here's the deal. I'm only 4'11".
Oh,
So
wow.
when I put it in, the guy who was building it for me said, we usually don't do this unless the ceiling's like 12 feet. And I said, look at me.
that is so cute. Oh my gosh. I think it just looks cool too.
Yeah, it does. It frames it perfectly in the camera.
Yeah. So I was just going to say, we did a little intro to you. I know you have no idea what we said.
I don't.
I know you don't. And it's, it was, it's kind of like what we could glean off of the internet. But we always like to have our guests kind of do their own little intro. And we'll kind of go from there. I know some guests are just like, hey, I'm so-and-so. I have a cat, I have a dog, blah, blah, blah. Some go a little bit deeper. It's totally up to you as to where you take it. And we'll kind of roll with it.
Well, I'll do it if you do it.
Okay.
Let's. Okay, sure.
I like it. Yeah, we actually haven't had that
it.
for quite a long time. I love it.
No, that's great. For sure.
Okay.
Okay, you go first.
Oh, I think I'm gonna make Hero go first because I did a lot of the talking before you popped on. So I'm putting him in the spotlight.
Yes, you definitely fetched a lot too. So I'm Hiro Suzaki Sequel Prince. I am the co-host and co-creator of the Getting Jewcy podcast, in addition with my best friend beside me on the left side, Rachel Rosen. Born and raised in Vancouver, BC, proudly identified as autistic, neurodivergent, and also queer, gay, my entire life. And I am very passionate about helping others come into their own understanding of who they are and empowering them to be the best version of themselves that they can be.
That's very cool.
Thank you.
That was good. That was good. I like it. I like it. I like it. Yeah, really good. Why don't we do you next, Leah, and it'll pop to me. We'll kind of like split it.
Okay. All right.
That's Rachel needing more time.
It's not me needing more time. It's just okay, sure. Yeah, why not?
Okay, I have one more, but I don't forget. I don't want to forget to tell you how it is I became an Astros fan, because it'll break Hasidic stereotypes.
Oh,
okay.
Okay. I
Love
like
that.
it. I like
Perfect.
that. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
My name is Leah Lax. I wasn't born Leah. I was born Lisa, and in Dallas, Texas. And I was very much a middle continent Texas public school girl, raised in a secular Jewish home. And I became Hasidic, or I joined the Chabad Hasidim I started at 15. And by 16, I was really deeply and completely in, very much my adolescent rebellion. I
Wow,
also
yeah.
graduated high school at 16 and went off to university and bonded with one of the first on-campus Hasidic groups that Chabad was running. They're now universities all over, everywhere. And that kind of sealed the deal.
Wow.
I had an arranged marriage. I was engaged at 18, married at 19. And because birth control is not allowed by halakha, and certainly in the stricter interpretation of Chabad, I had 7 children in 10 years. But within all of that, I put aside the fact that I'm a lesbian, and lived a very closeted life all those years. It sounds so clear, but it wasn't, because I grew up in an era when the media wasn't filled with identities and that and vocabulary for things like that. And I grew up in a very conservative environment. My family wasn't so conservative, but the world around me was. I didn't have the vocabulary. And when you're young, you don't label things that feel perfectly natural and normal until someone pulls you aside and says, hey, you're gay. This is why you feel that way. But that didn't really happen. I knew not to act on my feelings, even though my adolescent diaries are filled with passionate feelings about other girls. I was very much socialized to get married, and the Hasidic world seemed to say, well, you don't really know how to live as a straight girl, but here's a list you can follow. Here's a book, here's a list, and you can follow the rules, and then you'll be in. I'm also genderqueer. Very commonly dream at night that I'm various genders. Sometimes I'm male, sometimes I'm female, very often indeterminate. It seems to just come very naturally out of my unconscious. I can say that inside of me, I still don't get the difference. I just don't. And, I mean, to me, it just seems to be sort of an arbitrary body exterior, but people are just people. And so the other thing that the Hasidic life offered me was a bulleted list on how to be a woman, how to be specifically a woman. And as an insecure and ridiculously young person, I said, that's great. You gave me a list of instructions. And that meant that I wasn't going to feel different anymore. I wasn't going to feel marginalized anymore. I wasn't going to be looking at my adolescent peers who were like changed before my eyes. They'd all gone all fluttery, all the girls, and they were fluttering over the boys. And it was like going, I don't even know you anymore. Why did you change? What's going on? Instead, so I always felt like on the margins, and instead I could follow the rules and be like everybody else and be mainstream and accepted. It was incredibly enticing. I had a lot of other reasons too, but
isn't that interesting? It's so interesting to hear that, because, and we've talked to other guests about this before too, that at that time in in the world, or not in the world, but in North America, I guess, like I could say, is it's like we always kind of wanted to aspire to be normal, like, or not normal, but just
To be the
Loving-
majority.
not to be majority, and not to be labeled as different. We didn't want to be
Correct.
different, and that was like oh my gosh, like do whatever you can do not to be different. But
Yeah.
now it's like flipped.
Mhm.
It's completely flipped.
Yeah.
And the reason, for example, I have a couple of friends that are school teachers for elementary school kids. And it's almost like they were saying some of the kids almost feel bad if they don't have something that's different now. Like they want to be a different name or a different something this day or the next day, because otherwise it's not interesting. And the kids, so it's like completely flipped on its head. So it's it's just an observation. It's very fascinating. So
Mhm.
It gives me a lot of hope for the future.
yeah,
Well
absolutely.
said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of questions I have, Leah. No, I'm sorry, it's Leah, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's
Okay.
funny because I was watching an interview with you, and I think I was like, how do you pronounce her name? And then I think the person said Leah, so I'm because it must be Leah. My middle name is Leah, and it's spelled the same.
Oh.
So I figured it was, but I just wanted to clarify.
And your first name is,
Is Rachel.
it is Rachel.
Rachel. Yeah. So what's interesting, I think about, and I'll introduce myself now actually, because it's interesting because, okay, I'll just say I'm Rachel Leah Rosen.
Mhm.
It's a very Jewish sounding name for sure. But what I think is interesting is that even though it sounds very Jewish, I was not brought up that Jewish really. So I would call myself a pretty ishy Jew. I come from grandparents that were Holocaust survivors. So I am a grandchild of Holocaust survivors. I was born in Toronto, but I moved to Vancouver, British Columbia when I was quite little. And pretty much my entire adult life, I've been dealing with mental health challenges, predominantly generalized anxiety disorder and depression. And it's taken me this many years to also realize that there are intergenerational traumas that have happened through grandparents predominantly that do affect my mental health. And I'm only just now kind of diving into not necessarily what's happened to me directly, but what's happened to family members that might have therefore affected me. So whether it be how my dad was raised and then how he ended up raising me because of, kind of the outward world in that sense, or genetically speaking.
Mhm.
Yeah. So for me, this podcast is a way to hopefully dive into those things and also just give people a voice that are also dealing with mental health challenges in any way, shape, or form, and just kind of to erase that stigma eventually, which I feel like we're starting to do finally after all these years. So yeah.
Tell me how long we have.
Oh, no problem. We have, I mean,
Because
as
I
long
can do a deep dive into anything you do. That's okay.
That's
I
great.
love it. Well, I
I
mean,
have
go
until
ahead.
I have about until 20 after 7. So 20
Or 7-ish.
after
Yeah, I
9 on
mean,
your part.
Okay, we're good.
we're pretty good. We're pretty good.
What you're talking about is something I go into very deeply in my next book that's coming
Oh,
out.
wow.
Oh,
Okay.
amazing.
That whole issue of intergenerational trauma as Jews in North America is very new and very fresh, and in other words, very raw and powerful for all of us. I mean, look at all of the people that are descended from Native Americans who were who are deeply, deeply traumatized, or all of the people who are descended from Native Africans who were
Right.
Yes.
so horrendously treated, or you can say the people that are descended from further generations who were, enslaved or tortured. It's still many more generations for them than it is for us. And but we have more objective. We understand that not only is the society still holding that trauma and reenacting it, but the people, the individuals very much are also. So I think we have a very long way to go.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I mean, all four of my grandparents were refugees before there was a term refugee, which really came into
Wow.
play in the general media and became official in 1951 when the UN established refugee as an actual status,
Mm.
defined the terms.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents were of that generation that came here before World War One,
Oh, wow.
escaping pogroms and just the absolutely tremendously horrible treatment of Jews in Eastern Europe. I mean, you understand that. I mean, no one told me as a child how bad the treatment of Jews was in Europe.
Yeah.
If you just even look at a list of how many times Jews were expelled from different towns across Europe,
Oh, yeah.
this goes on for pages and pages and pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then when you see the overlap, for example, crimes against Jews weren't prosecuted. It was very common to kidnap and to rape from the Jewish community, when it was very common for principalities to stand up armies and march them to war and say let them just attack Jewish communities and take provisions and whatever they needed along the way. That way they didn't have to provision them. And so, groups would march through and suddenly attack and destroy everything and rape the women and kill people. I mean, this was Jewish life.
Mm-hmm.
And it would get better for a while and it would get worse. It would get better. Then everybody would be banished, and then they'd come back. It was common for Jews to be taxed 30 and 40% more, 30 and 40% of like everything they owned, and or more. I mean, or sudden tax because I mean, this goes on and on. We know this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And
My family escaped from there. Like, I also want to point out that when I was growing up, there were still satellite ancient communities, pockets of Jews all over Europe and North Africa and the Middle East.
right.
Wow.
Very, very old, thousands of
Wow.
little by little. It was gradual, and it started with the establishment of the state of Israel, which kicked in an official state's anti-Semitism in so many places. They're all gone. And I mean, not all of them, but almost all of them. Today, half of the Jews in the world live in North America.
Right.
Wow.
Wow.
I don't know if I knew that statistic.
No, I didn't know
Yeah,
that
I
either.
didn't know that.
No.
Wow.
It's enormous. And another thing that's unbelievable is that most of the Jews in North America came from a swath in Eastern Europe that is only about 100 miles wide.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Yeah.
it covers the borders. It's all border territory of Belarus, Lithuania, Ukraine,
Yeah.
Right.
Russia,
Poland.
and Poland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so my grandmother was from Lithuania and my grandfather was from Poland. So even mentioning that kind of span of different countries within or cities within Europe, even just says a lot as well. So.
And when you think about how Jews, it's not only that Jews were careful where they were demanding that they only marry one another because they were always obsessed with Jewish survival, but around them didn't allow anybody. It was a crime to marry a Jew, just like it was a crime for white people to marry black people.
Black people. Yeah.
Oh,
You're from Lithuania too. My grandparents are from Lithuania. At some level, we're probably related.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, just because of relevance and who knows how small the world is. My grandmother, her name was Ruta or Ruth Crone, Ruth Siegel Crone. So I mean, I don't know how much that name has gotten to North America, but there's a book from an author that we had the author on our show earlier last year, or maybe this year. And so she did a lot of Holocaust archival work for her story and capturing that. So it's interesting, again, when you're talking about, as you say, you're an author, you're a writer, and we understand that you have some other creations from your stories that are coming out to the general public, which is super exciting. So as you continue to open up and kind of walk us through your journey from the early days to now, I'm excited to learn about that as well.
And I brought that up to say, I think that in my background was a big part of what made me, when I chose an adolescent rebellion, go there.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Yeah, what drew you to, because I just, from what you're not necessarily saying, I feel like, your parents were you influenced by your parents to make that decision at all?
No,
I mean, just to rebel against it, perhaps, but
my background, my upbringing is very much like yours.
interesting. Yeah, that's so
But I
interesting.
grew up with the sense of who are we?
Yes, me too. Yes.
I mean, my
Yeah.
grandparents were like social players. You know, it was like they were posturing, they were walking the walk and talking the talk, like new immigrants do, are anxious to fit in and
Yes.
survive and succeed. And, you know, I was like, but who are we really? And the Hasidim were saying, we are an embodiment, we are a recreation of everything that was lost. The Holocaust is a huge part behind the enormous growth of the Hasidic movement in North America, and then they spread out back in the world. But Chabad was all about repopulating the Jewish people, redeveloping the Jewish people and keeping it what they consider to be authentic. And they said, we know who you are. We'll tell you who you are. Just follow this list. It'll be kissed by God. You will be surrounded by a loving, supportive community. You won't feel marginalized, and you will have a very clear identity. And I was very young. You know, well, the religion is enormous.
At what point did you have like a twinge of like, something doesn't feel right, or like I was like, and how long did you suppress that for? Or did it, like, were you kind of just following blindly for quite a long time? Or I mean, maybe it wasn't blindly, that's kind of putting words in your mouth, but
there were always twinges.
Okay.
And I felt twinges of, wait, I don't get this. Meaning, wait,
Okay.
I agree with this. Wait, something isn't clicking right. I would just try harder to fit in. Always.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
it would drive me further in, which is very foolish. But I was,
No.
all teenagers are fools. So.
Right.
Before we go further, I want to
Yes.
take a huge leap here and say, hello, my name is Leah Lax, and I'm also a librettist, because this story that we're starting to go into,
Yes.
a great part of what saved my life was when I couldn't sleep at night, when I developed insomnia over these conflicts that we're starting to touch on. I would stay up at night and write, and I developed as an artist, just like my mother, who was a very fine artist. She put it in me. Art saved my life. Developing it as an artist made me say, I have to allow all those crazy spontaneous thoughts to happen, not suppress them, not push them away. And I can make something beautiful with them. And the more I did that, the more I like popped into 3 dimensions. Eventually I started working with composers, and when I came out with my, and I write the words, and the composer set them to music. And I had some pretty good success with that, which you can ask me about.
So cool. Yeah.
But when my memoir Uncovered came out, the fabulous, marvelous, amazing composer Lori Laitman, who's like world known for setting, especially for songs, that she does classic songs, and she's like super famous for the way she sets words to music, but she makes it sound and the rhythm of the words become the music. I can't explain it. You have to listen. But when you hear Lori's music sung, you clearly hear every single word and feel every word.
Oh my gosh.
He read my memoir and got in touch with me, and we met up, and he asked me if I would consider writing an opera based on my memoir. And at that point, I kind of knew how. So we embarked on it. It languished a bit until lockdown. And with everything canceled, is that right? Or did it happen? Yeah, Lori finished out all the music during that time. It was so amazing.
Right.
And here we are. And then again, the pandemic postponed things, because even though it was later, it was still not safe to perform, and our performance wound up being postponed by 2 years. So the opera called Uncovered, directed by the unbelievably brilliant Beth Greenberg. We are 3 Jewish women that created this thing. Beth, stage director, the director at New York City Opera for 23 years. We're talking about the world.
Holy moly.
Wow.
And that's premiering this month, correct?
Nearing 2 weeks. on
So
Netflix.
Wow.
exciting. Oh my gosh. So you must be jetting over there, I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, yeah. The Art Center in Manhattan. So like,
Oh, that's
the company that's producing is called City Lyric Opera, and it's
yes.
like Lori loves them, and I had not heard of them. They're small, they're wonderful, they're very, very high production qualities. Their music is great. It was founded by women. It is run by women, and it is
Wow.
all about affordable opera and new and very real stories. So it was like the perfect thing. So look it
Sounds-
up. Lyric Opera. The director and the brainchild behind it is Megan Gillis, the CEO.
Wow.
Oh, it just makes me wish we lived closer. We have so many amazing guests on, and we don't usually get the opportunity to actually see our guests in action, so to speak. So is it going to be recorded?
Yes.
Do you think? Okay.
I'm like, maybe we'll get to come and perform it in Toronto. Like, this is the professional debut, but
Yes.
we hope it'll happen all over. So
I could see it being actually very well received in Vancouver. Vancouver has a very tight-knit Jewish community that's a bit spread out, but there are a lot of people that would probably be interested in engaging with your production and your story. I could only imagine Toronto, of course, but Vancouver as well.
Vancouver, I adore Vancouver, and it's gorgeous. So like, let's do this.
Well, fantastic. If I had any connections, I would definitely think about it for you. I don't know any.
I might actually interestingly
Rachel,
enough.
Rachel has a lot more background in musical theater because her parents are musical theater parents. So she might have some, like through the Stanley Theater, maybe.
Growing up, my that's another, I'm Rachel Rosa, and I come from parents that were musical theater performers. And my mom's partner, actually her current partner for many years now, he's an opera singer, and he actually so I mean he's retired now, but he's so there's a potential community there that that's pretty exciting.
Like, how cool is this?
Yeah, very cool. I know.
I can't tell you it's easy. I mean, I wrote the opera like something that's occurring in memory. I mean, I had to say, I can't base this on my memoir, or it'll be like derivative. I had to put it away and create a whole new work that loosely follows the story, but it had to be created from the outset as musical theater, as opera.
Right.
So it kind of occurs in memory, and sometimes it moves around in time. And sometimes the voice of the chorus, I used to be the voice in Leah's head.
Wow.
So, there's this one line from a character called Mother, my mother, because she was, at the time that I got married, she was big into the new feminine. She's a very wonderful artist. She believed I was an artist. She was big into the new wave feminism, very big. And she had grown up quite hampered by a society that, for example, people forget this. An example, women could not get credits in their own name until, I don't know when, but it was the 1970s. It was till I was an adult.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
You were Mrs. So-and-so, and you were Mrs. followed by your husband's name. You couldn't get a credit card. You couldn't buy a car. You couldn't sign a lease.
Wow.
So, I mean, you can imagine how tied down that was. So she was thrilled with the freedom that was she hoped would be coming. So she sings to me as she puts the veil over my head for the wedding. It's a new world for women. You can do and be so very much more. And throughout the rest of the opera, every time the character called Leah faces a challenge for which she doesn't have the vocabulary or the support or the place to make a decision that she doesn't know how to make, the voice of the mother's there going, it's a new world for women, and it's her voice. And then she steps forward, because I've never seen another opera approach abortion, but there's an abortion in this story.
Okay, so that's something I was going to mention. I mean, just what's been happening in the States lately, as the whole world knows, practically. What would you say to, you just saying it's a new world for women. What would you say to women now living with what they're living with? Is there a message that you would pass on to them, or?
Remember, I'm in Texas.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So this has been
Yes.
going on for a long time.
Yes. Yes.
Back to,
Yes.
years now, back to
Yeah.
when we started the whole fight over women's healthcare clinics all over the country that had government funding that
Mhm.
provided low-cost healthcare to women and nearly free birth control and regular pap smears and things like that.
Mhm.
The Republicans decided to label abortion clinics. This is what you might have heard of, when they were screaming about abortion clinics. Even everybody, it became so ubiquitous that everybody began to call them that.
Mm.
That it was just a tiny bit of the
It's a women's health clinic, essentially. Yeah. Yeah.
and they were, every single one of them, even then, was shut down in Texas.
Mhm.
Long before the state managed to outlaw
Mhm.
abortion for everybody.
Mhm.
What would I say to these women? I'd say, get in my car. I'll drive you into the next day.
Right.
Mhm. Mhm.
There are still places where they can go, but it's
Mhm.
so difficult.
Yeah.
Mhm. I do want to just interject and say one reason why I'm being more of an observer and a listener is because I feel that's appropriate in terms of what's being discussed, and I have a lot to learn and understand about all the subjects that you were just discussing. So just in case if people are wondering why I'm not speaking, or it might be more dominant by Rachel, I just want to be an observer and really learn and soak in. I'll interject if necessary.
As a
Okay.
guy, right?
Yeah.
Imagine yourself in that situation. Imagine, let's go back to the religious world. Okay, let's go back
Yeah.
to what uncovered. Imagine yourself female in a female body, and imagine you're in a situation where you don't make decisions over your body, where you're told everywhere you turn your body belongs to God, where you're told this applies to women and men, your body belongs to God. You follow the laws in Jewish law that keep your body holy. Your body is a temple for God, and the way you keep it holy is by following these rules, except that it sort of happens that 95% of the rules apply to you, and 5% of them apply to the other gender. Just imagine you're in a female body. Women become so inured to that they really believe it and wouldn't imagine making such a decision. But when I became pregnant with my 8th child,
Wow.
and my 7th child was just, I don't remember, 2 or 3 months old,
Mhm.
and he was born premature.
Mhm.
I'm high maintenance. And my 6th child was under a year. And all of the children, the oldest of all of them, was 9 years old.
Wow. Yeah.
Or was he 10? No, was 10 years old. I had 7 children in 10 years.
Jeez. Yeah.
And my husband had to work very, very long hours, and we were still, you can imagine how expensive that is. I was quite depleted, exhausted. I had that baby prematurely because my body couldn't handle the pregnancy anymore.
Mhm.
Right.
And then I found I was pregnant again.
Wow.
Now, I was at that point very much devoted to the life I had trained myself to be. I mean,
Right.
yeah, I still embrace a lot of the general values that I took away from Hasidic life, and I treasure them. It strengthened the experience strengthening my Jewish identity very greatly. But at that point, also, I was living in a community where you have to be perceived as someone who follows the rules very closely.
Mhm.
It will affect your social status, which will affect your children. And so
Right.
I worked on myself to remind myself to have faith and to believe and to follow the rules carefully. And it was in this situation, exhausted, threatened, newly pregnant, but yet consciously working on myself all the time to be that good religious Jewish woman and Hasidic woman and wife, that I felt I was experiencing a body scream, something that went beyond anything I could think or talk myself out of. I walked in circles around the house all night, day after day. I couldn't think, I couldn't talk. My body was screaming, get it out, get it out.
Yeah.
I felt that this would kill me. And I didn't have
Wow.
to. It's not like I had a heart condition or anything where a doctor would say, yeah, now or you'll die. You won't even survive the.
Yeah.
Who's going to say that?
Your brain finally connected with your brain and body. Just your brain was telling your body, no, it was real. And now we know how much is connected our brains and our bodies, but we didn't really understand it back then. Right.
Mhm.
So
I'd say my body was telling my brain.
yes. Yeah. Unreal. Yeah. And I'm curious to know, what would have been like, if you didn't follow a rule, for example, how would you be treated, or what was the effect of that? There's the cause and effect, like what would have happened?
I mean, it wasn't super dramatic.
Okay.
But just individually, it was scary.
Yes.
So it depends on how bad the rule. Okay.
Right.
The weight of the rule. Like if it was
Right.
something like abortion, which would be equal to like publicly breaking the Sabbath or walking right into a non-kosher restaurant in the daytime and,
Right.
ordering steak, those three would all be about on the same level.
Mm.
It would have an immediate and powerful effect on my social standing. I'd probably lose my job, which was being a teacher in the Jewish school. My
Okay.
friends would instantly say they can no longer eat in my home and would not allow their children to come play in my home because they
Wow.
couldn't be there. And there'd be a lot of gossip.
Right.
And we were very much afraid of gossip.
Right.
Nobody would marry my children. That's always your fear. They wouldn't have a future. I wrote a scene when Laura Laitman asked me to write this opera. I went home, thought about it, sketched it out, because this book, I'm going to show you the book. Here's the book. Is around 340 pages. It has dozens of scenes. And I
Yes.
would get 4 or 5 scenes. That's it. And the book had, I don't know, 100,000 words. A libretto was 3,000. Like I had to.
Oh, wow.
Like a
Yeah.
sculptor, you get this big block of stone, and Michelangelo used to say, well, all I do is take away the extraneous stone and the sculpture's hiding inside.
Mhm.
And I felt like I had to do that, but I'm no Michelangelo. So
Right.
I sat down and wrote out what scenes I absolutely, without which I wouldn't be here talking to you.
Yes.
That's my goal. And this was a key one. And so I called Lori and said, Lori, there's going to be a lot of opera companies that won't touch this because I can't write it without the abortion. And she never hesitated for a moment. She said, go for it. So the crisis point in the scene, in the opera, is the abortion. Yeah. And the crisis point of that is the opening song of the character we call older Leah, who her song is called Get It Out.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And you see
wow.
it evolve. It did get it out, get it out, get it out. I mean, it's just stop.
Wow.
But what happens in the opera is that the voices around her layer. I mean, there is a confrontation with the husband, and he loses it, and he says, I'll have to divorce you. And it's very dramatic. But there's this background stuff going on that I get to do on stage that I can't do. Like when I write, I can only write one voice at a time.
Yeah.
I can build all the layers. So there's the voice of the community singing very serenely and beautifully, angelically, your body belongs to God. A beautiful new soul has come into the world, and she's going to get it out against that.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Wow, that sounds incredibly powerful. I can't even, I really, I really hope I can't, well, I can't believe I haven't even read your book yet. So we were just introduced to you not that long ago. I didn't have time to read your book, but I'm going to read your book. But
What you'll
speaking,
do is when we finish, you'll text me your mailing address and I'll send you a copy.
oh my God, that would you sign it for me too? That would be amazing. Thank you. But
That's
speaking,
what I wanted to say to you. It's Kiros, right? Did I say it right?
Oh, Hero. But yeah, I like that name though. Heroes. It's very awesome. No, it's Hero.
I didn't hear you. Spell it.
Hiiro. Hero.
Okay. That's what I wanted to say to you, Hero, is imagine being in a place where you could not make a very private decision that affected nobody else in the world about your body.
Can't imagine.
As simple as getting a tattoo to as
Mhm.
getting a vasectomy, where somebody says, no, God will not allow you to do that. Not your choice.
I can't, and my stomach turns and my gut wrenches hearing all these
My palms are
anecdotes.
sweaty. Like it's seriously.
But it's visceral, which is
It
also
is.
important because
Yeah.
people respond really powerfully to trauma, and therefore the viscera that comes from trauma and the bonding that comes from trauma bonding. So there is a time and a place, and there is an there's an appropriate space and place to use powerful storytelling, provocative storytelling to make an impact for the better. So the fact that you have been provided not just with your talent and your skill set of being a creator and being an artist, finding the right people to provide you the platform and the venues to translate that message into the greater public, that's really powerful because not everybody gets that opportunity, and there needs to be much more representation for anybody who might be dealing with that in a multi marginalization or multi sense of creed. And you are proving that is happening, and let alone in the city of Manhattan, which is huge in terms of exposure. So I'm very thankful that you have been provided those blessings, including being a successful published author and then being an opera writer. I mean that's really incredible, and I'm very sorry and cannot relate to anything you just said for the most part. But one thing I am very curious to learn more about, if you feel inclined to share, is about your sexuality. And in terms of you being so firmly identified with it from early on, suppressing it. And when was the time in your life that you chose to say, I am going to make this conscious decision and I'm willing to embrace whatever comes from it? Meaning, acknowledging yourself, identifying it, and choosing to live a lifestyle that supports exactly who you are today.
It's so interesting that you say that because it's directly related to the abortion.
Okay.
Huh. Okay.
As a woman, I was saying, well, I have obligations, more obligations to others than to myself, to my children, to my husband, to my community, to God. My feelings don't matter that much. And I suffered mental health issues, anxiety, and insomnia. And the insomnia turned out to be a good thing because when I suffered that much from it, I started to write, and I basically taught myself to write in those hours of the night when I couldn't sleep, when it was quiet. It's also writing made me explore my feelings and my thoughts, and that was an expression for that anxiety and for those conflicts in me, and it helped me mentally. But it didn't change the fact for a long time that in the daytime I was still suppressing my feelings and trying to behave, to do what others expected of me, and too tired and too numb to act on anything until the abortion. In other words, until I had to, until my body screamed at me, until it was a threat to my health, to my very being. I'm going to quickly finish the abortion story and show you how it connected.
Sure.
It was a turning point in my life because for the first time I said, I will own my body. I will make this decision because it's not a clear threat. It's just something I know in my gut. I know in my being. And I very secretly admitted to myself that the new baby might not kill me after all, but it would kill my soul. That I would be a shell, and I wouldn't be able to mother the other children that I loved very, very, very much, that I existed for. I wouldn't be able to care for myself either.
Yeah.
So I made this decision that I was going to have the abortion. I was going to get it no matter what. I made that decision first. Then I went to my husband and told him, and got the idea. And his reaction was very powerful. He yelled, he cried, he yelled. He said, that's murder." He jumped up. He said, "You would kill one of our children. I'll have to divorce you. But you know something? He's basically a good guy. He is a good guy." He started to cry, and he said, "No, I don't want to hurt you. I don't know." And then I realized, the best thing for both of us would be to ask a rabbi, which was what we were all trained to do. We were required by Jewish law, because your body doesn't belong to yourself. It's an act of Jewish law. The rabbi was the voice of Jewish law. And secretly, I said to myself, we'll do this. And if the rabbi says no, I'm going to do it anyway. But, this way I wouldn't have to, I wouldn't have to risk the complete destruction of my marriage and family.
Right.
Or the possibility of losing my children. But we did ask that rabbi, and the rabbi said, "I have to talk to your doctor." Well, don't you know, I got with that doctor, and I told her, I said, "The rabbi is going to call you, and you have to know that only a threat to my life will really clinch the deal." The doctor said, "I can't prove that. I'm a doctor, and I'll only tell him the truth." And I was like, that'll have to do.
Yeah.
So I held my breath, knowing what I would do if the answer was no. But I still went this route. The rabbi called us, got the two of us on the phone, and said, "You have to do this." Because unlike American law, unlike Christian, the people who think it's Christian law, Christian values, Jewish law, even at its strictest, provides for abortion if it's a serious threat, even to the health of the mother. It doesn't have to be life or death. They take the value of life and death to mean something that could seriously harm and possibly permanently harm the mother. That was enough for this very strict Hasidic rabbi to say, "No, you have to do this."
Wow.
He also knew the community. He knew their prejudices. He knew the ignorance of some. He knew the kinds of forces that can be unleashed, like are unleashed in my country today. And he said, "But do not tell anybody. No one must know." Well, my husband took that as he took it literally. And he grieved very deeply for the lost child. He didn't hold it against me, because the rabbi said, but he wouldn't talk about it. And this became a great gap between us. And in that gap, in that silence, I was left with someone who had woken up. I was going to take control and ownership of my body, and I would never give that up again, ever. And once I had that change in consciousness, that awareness, that power, that ownership, I began to the next step quite clearly in my mind was not intellectual. It just was awareness. So all these feelings came welling up. I had always dealt with, for example, erotic lesbian dreams that I denied in the daytime. I could not deny them anymore. I lived in my body, and my body was me. That's what the abortion changed. That's what the abortion woke up in me. So one led directly to the other. And in time, I allowed myself to fall in love. I had an affair with a woman, which is in the opera.
In the community, in the community. No, I didn't. I was going to say, and just one quick question as well. How long had you been in the community just before this all happened? So how long were you in the community when you got the abortion? How long had it been? 20, 30. Yeah.
Let me think about that. Maybe 13, 14. No, in the community or married?
In the community.
I don't know, close to 20 years.
Close to 20 years. Okay. Just trying to put it in
17,
perspective.
18,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
long,
Yes. Yeah.
into my 30s.
Yes.
And it was still a long time before I left.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was trying to put a timeline to. So that's what I find kind of interesting too. So, yeah. So you said you had an affair with a woman that was not in the community.
That's right. She didn't live that far away. I had
Yep.
met, and I actually pursued it. I actually
Wow.
going to allow myself this. I may never get to leave here. I have children. I knew I could lose my children if I left, but I am going to allow myself this experience. We had a very hot relationship.
Wow.
I would sneak out in the middle of the night.
Wow. That's
should-
amazing.
So here we have, an opera that has both an abortion and a lesbian love affair.
Wow.
Incredible. That's going to be so powerful and totally split people's perspectives in a way that is about damn time, to be honest.
I hope so. Can we go light for a minute? Do you want
Yes,
to
please. Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
know why I'm into baseball?
Yeah,
we
absolutely.
we
We'd
like to
love
hop
to.
all over the place. So yes,
And
why are you into baseball?
And I love me a set of balls. So please share away.
Because I stayed for a number of years after that. I was raising, of my 7 children, 5 boys. And the Astrodome, where the Houston Astros used to play, sorry about that noise. The Astrodome, where the Houston Astros used to play, was too big. Even though it drew a very large crowd, it was enormous. And so the upper reaches, they would sell for $1 and $5 seats.
Whoa.
And how many places can you go and take 5 or 6, sometimes 6, sometimes a lot of the girls would come along, or even 7 kids at a time, and afford it.
Yeah, that's true.
That's incredible. Yeah.
We went to many, many baseball games, and all my boys are big Astros fans.
Wow.
Wow.
I never could figure out why.
Huh.
Oh my gosh.
That's
And
one
so-
thing that's one
Yeah,
thing
go
I
ahead.
do want to ask about in terms of, again, the sports is a great analogy, a great segue, but I'm getting a sense you have a strong relationship with all of your children. So I'm guessing they must be like early 20s, mid 20s, depending.
No. This all happened a while back, and my children ranged today from 32 to 42 years old.
Okay.
Oh.
Probably you're both considerably younger than my youngest child.
Well,
No,
actually,
I'm
I'm almost. Oh my God, that's so odd to say. I'm almost 31, actually.
I'm actually closer to your eldest, believe it or not. I'm 40 in January. I can't tell ages very well either. That's okay.
Yeah. No, so in terms of your children, do they also live in Houston then? Like they all live nearby you, or?
No, I just want to say I told you that to blow Hasidic stereotypes, because I was taking all the kids. As far as the kids, my oldest had his own little crisis of faith, and it's in the book uncovered, so I encourage you to read it. But
yes, I will.
When he wanted to leave yeshiva and go to college, I told my husband, we will support him, because that's the way you keep your children close. And to his great credit, my Hasidic husband said, if that's what he's going to do, then yes. And my son went on to college, and pretty much left the religion. So he was the oldest and kind of the pioneer. He was the first one ahead of me.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And today, my children are divided. Some are religious, some are not. I'm not going to say who's who.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's okay. Yeah.
And they're all very close to one another. And although my relationship was very rocky with some of them in the beginning, after I left their father, I left the life that had formed, particularly the religious ones, in every way. That I became public about something that they thought should remain very private. Some of them thought should remain very private. We had a lot to work through. We haven't worked through all of it with all of them. With most of my kids, it's unconflicted now, and I'm very, very close. I basically don't give them a choice because I refuse to go away.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love
Here you
that.
go. Yeah. It's like I gave you life. You live your life the one that you want to live, but I gave you life and I deserve to be in your life, and we will work through whatever we need to work through.
And you don't get to choose how I live my life now.
No.
Yeah. Yes.
When you're young and you leave home, you can do it because you feel like at some level that you have an anchor. You know, mom and dad don't leave, your room stays your room. Kids always get insulted when mom goes, okay, I took your room and made it into my office.
Right.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I went away, and I think some of them really felt adrift. I know it was hard.
Yeah.
And that's just, where we are with some. With others, it's just completely unconflicted. And I'm very close. And anyway, I have 13 grandchildren now.
Hey.
Wow.
Podcast.
And, sorry, say that again. The last thing you said?
It's a Jewish podcast.
Yes. Oh my God. That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Before I forget, because maybe you've probably been asked this question before as well, just because there's a bit of a parallel from your story to the Netflix series Unorthodox. Have you seen it, first of all?
Absolutely.
And what are your thoughts on whether how realistic it was or just what was your critique on it? I'm curious to know, because I feel like for anyone who is not in the Jewish community whatsoever, they probably are familiar with that series just because of how popular it became. So
But we have to differentiate, because I was a member of Lubavitch, the Chabad Hasidim.
okay.
And a large percentage of our community were people that weren't born and raised that way, who had been, basically converted into the Hasidic life.
Okay.
Majority of kind of leaders that were born and raised that had yeshiva education. Now that community is next generation now. So most of the people in the Houston Chabad community today were born and raised that way. Our
Right.
community was every bit as strict as other Hasidic communities, but more open with the world. Some of them had televisions. We did not, because we were stricter. And our rabbis really disapproved of the Lubavitcher Rebbe disapproved of television. But there were varying levels in terms of media and in terms of connection with the world. It was different. Even then the community in Williamsburg, which Unorthodox was not giving any secular education to the kids, not speaking English. They were way more insulated. In fact, they wouldn't allow their kids, to this day, people, Hasidim in the community that Deborah Feldman's Unorthodox is based in, where she was born and raised, they don't let their kids marry Hasidic kids from Crown Heights, from the Lubavitch. Now, it happens anyway sometimes, but it's not, that's not the norm.
Oh, interesting.
So, they were like the reform among the Hasidim. And so I can't from the inside tell you how authentic Unorthodox was.
Right.
I went to Williamsburg many times. I knew people, a couple people in my life who lived there or who were of that group. And from everything I could tell, and then in addition, I know some people that were involved with the movie. Consultants. So from everything I've heard as well, it was amazingly authentic. It was
that's the impression I get. Absolutely. Well, and just if in your experience, finally departing from the community, what was that like? What was that experience like?
Well, I want to pivot back to the opera for a minute and tell
please, because that's so relevant and we want people to hear about it. So please, yes.
So there's this super famous opera. I think it's one of the very most performed in America, called Susanna.
Okay.
And the opera Susanna has the same story as Scarlet Letter. So there's this super religious community that's totally insulated. A woman has a secret affair with the leader. She has a baby and stays, but she gets ostracized and has to wear something like the Scarlet A and Scarlet Letter, so that she's she's labeled as a fornicator for the rest of her life. But the child grows up like a little angel. And then eventually there's a crisis and she's basically hounded out of the community. That's the story. That's the story of Scarlet Letter. That's the story of Susanna, but it's moved up into a more modern time. Lori Laitman had actually written an opera called The Scarlet Letter. There's never been one before. And it's a major opera, big stage, big chorus. It premiered at Opera Colorado. I believe it should be part of American repertoire. It's just fabulous.
I'm gonna look that up. Yeah.
Very beautiful. And at some point when I was writing Uncovered, I said to Lori, "Oh, I get it. You just wrote Scarlet Letter. This is another Scarlet Letter." And she said, "Well, yeah, in a way."
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I decided that, I had to make it really clear that my story was not a Scarlet Letter. Why?
Right.
Because in Scarlet Letter and in Susanna, the woman is shamed and eventually runs away. And I left by choice. They didn't.
Right.
It was irrelevant to me that what happened is they found out about my affair. Okay. And the community.
Okay.
I didn't recognize that. I don't care. I made that choice. I had the power. My body.
Yeah.
I reject them. That's the big difference. And
Yeah.
the story ends very joyously because I had a liberal artist mother who was going, "It's a new world for women." And, I can tell you now, outside the opera, when I called Mom and said, "Mom, I'm leaving my husband. Don't worry, I'm taking my art and my cello. I play cello with me." I play very well.
Better than me.
It was the best story in history, especially for any Jewish parents ever, because she went, "Oh my God, you're coming home." It was
Oh my gosh. Oh
was
my.
great, right? So my story has this my book has this very joyous ending. Just gave away the ending, but my life, here proves it, the ending. So what do I have to hide?
Right.
Yes.
I didn't want this tragedy. I wanted my story as an opera to stand in distinction from the two others in whose footsteps, Uncovered follows artistically. And the big ending at the end of the opera has that confrontation. The two lovers are on the stage. The community discovers them.
Wow.
The lights go dark and threatening, and the whole chorus is singing "Uncovered, uncovered, uncovered." Because they've been literally uncovered. And Leah says, "Why, yes, uncovered." And she pulls her scarf off in front of the men and reveals her hair, and cover their eyes. I'm giving it away, but I don't care. And she pulls her skirt off and pants on underneath, and she says, "Yes, uncovered." And
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
she
Oh my gosh.
walks quite brazenly, proudly past each one of them as they turn away. She takes her cello like a suitcase and walks away. And
Wow.
before the end, she's gone. It ends with the community because they will never change.
Interesting.
They exist
Smart.
to keep prevent change. And so
Wow.
they return to the song that was at the beginning.
Wow. Wow. To always repeat.
Yeah.
Repeat. Oh my goodness. I am kind of speechless.
What can I say?
And I have goosebumps, and I am just so happy that we got to meet you. And I feel like this is almost a good time to wrap up our convo, just with the ending of what you just described to us. But as we sort of wrap everything up, I do want to know, what can you leave us with that you are also working on? Because you're mentioning you're working on another book, which, is it finished? Did you say?
Yeah.
It is finished. Okay.
Great.
So what else can we look forward to? Because for those of us that unfortunately can't make it to the live performance, really wish we could, how else can we support you, and what else can we look for in your world?
Well, I first have to say that none of that could have happened with just words on a page, which is all I know how to do.
Yeah.
Give it to two fine artists that turned into 3D and sound.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
to read, I mean, what both of them did, and I watched it because I had many conferences, is they read between the lines.
Mm-hmm.
A composer hears the tone and the emotion in between the words and in between the lines, and that's what they hear music as pure emotion. And so she
Right.
translated it directly into the language of emotion that she knows, and she caught it all. Lori would call me and say, play me music and say, and sing it to me and say, is this how you felt?
Wow.
It was awesome. And
Oh
then
gosh.
Bob Greenberg, who did the same thing, reading between the lines and calling me with the hardest of questions again and again and again, until she could envision a three-dimensionality, real people and sets and props and movement and dance unfolding on the stage, because all I had given to her was a sheaf of papers with words on it.
Words.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the world like collaboration. There's nothing in the world like working together. That's how the biggest things happen.
Yes.
I had to end on that. And then
I love that.
what I'm doing next is before this project, I wrote a big opera called The Refuge for Houston Grand Opera. That was years ago. But I wrote it by traveling all over my city and listening to the immigrants and refugees tell me their stories in depth at a time when I was new in the world and I was like an immigrant in my own society. And I felt I was just listening to try and get good material for the opera, but I quickly began to feel that they were leading me back into my own country, that this was a portrait of America, that they were showing me who we are now when I didn't know, when that question was still in my head. And so, and the opera was like crazy successful, like big New York Times review and NPR national podcast, like that level. It was huge.
Wow.
So I wrote when the years later, when my country started getting all xenophobic and crazy about immigrants, the 1,000 pages of transcripts that I had, and I culled through it and I wrote that story, letting the people speak of their own stories in their own words, but it's my journey through their stories. It makes me delve because in the process I came to a new understanding of what it is to be a hyphenated American. I delved into my Jewish identity, into the whole experience of inherited trauma, and I delved into my family's history and came to really understand why they were who they were and what had happened to me.
Right.
And that book is called Not From Here, The Song of America. It's being published in 33 countries, and it will be out summer.
Next summer.
Wow.
Okay. Oh my gosh. We might have to have you back in time for that, because that's very exciting. I can't wait to read that.
I was going to say that it would be beneficial to have you come back. If we would be so gracious to have some more of your time when you do drop that, and we can help support and expand that to our other audiences that deserve to know what you're doing and why they need to know about it.
I'd love to do that because I feel like with you guys, we can talk a lot about that. You know, it's just one of the things to me, the one closest to my heart, but that whole theme of like how to be a Jew in a secular society and hold on to who you are. And yet it's Western American culture that is our culture. Like, it's like, I call it dancing on the hyphen because we, with bad balance.
I love that. I love that. Even when you were talking about being a hyphenated American, I just think that's such a great way to summarize in a way that it's tangible and digestible. I'm very creative with my use of words. You can ask Rachel as well with that, but I've never actually said I'm a hyphenated whatever without labeling, but helping with identity. And that's brilliant. I'm gonna take a note from you. So thank you. I usually get speechless. I was saying to Rachel, I've definitely been speechless in this dialogue, and I've never lost her words. So thank you for humoring my ignorance, which is something that I like to say. And I am very grateful for your time and generosity and sharing so vulnerably and candidly, which is what we strive for on this podcast. So I really I'm grateful for your time.
But you had a lot to say. Just beware that if I come back, I'm going to have questions for you guys
I love
I would
being asked
love that. I
questions.
would love that.
I love that.
Well,
about your own sense of identity and how it's
yes.
what it is to
Sure.
be a Jew.
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
society.
For sure. We can do that in the second part now that we've established our rapport. That would be great.
I would equally love that. And the last thing maybe I'll just say in regards to that too about identity and being Jewish. I feel like the generations before us, like Hero and I being Holocaust survivors, grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, I feel like not until our generation have we really kind of cracked the egg open and really looked at it from a mental health perspective or standpoint. It wasn't really done. My parents, obviously their parents, like my dad was taught to push everything away, push it away. So it's almost like Hero and my generation are the ones that are kind of left with dealing with it.
Yeah.
In a sense, I'm not trying to say woe is me. It's more just like, because we're finally living in a day and age where it's okay to openly talk about these things where so it's kind of like we're finally now, our generation is sort of like we're dealing with the fallout of all that stuff. And it's almost like we're trying to be the voices and deal with all the pain and the suffering so that it doesn't continue on for more generations.
It's exact process in families, no matter where they were from Vietnam or India or Nigeria or Central South America. Everybody had trauma and loss and transition in one generation. That generation repressed their stories because they wanted their children to feel safe. The first generation born here felt very securely American and didn't at the same time knew not to ask questions. And it's the children who either move out or say or ask questions. Wait a minute, before I lose it completely. What happened? I found this everywhere, and I began to understand how much of Jewish identity is really an immigrant thing.
Interesting. Yeah.
So many of the same values. We're getting off on new tangents.
We are.
Before we end, I want to say, look at my book on Amazon. It's called Uncovered: How I Left Hasidic Life and Finally Came Home by Leah Lax. And if you are in the New York City area or anywhere near, look up City Lyric Opera and look for the opera Uncovered. And come. If you do come and find me. You'll find me sitting in the back probably with tears going down my face. Because I get to do that in the dark and deal with characters on stage named Leah and my mother who's deceased, et cetera, and over again. See her leave for a new life with great strength and great joy.
My gosh.
I hope you come. Don't hesitate to find me, and find me on Facebook. It's my page is public so that anyone who wants can write. And I answer everything because I do this to have conversations like this. I can't get enough of them.
That's great. I do want to ask, dare I ask, are you on TikTok or Instagram?
Instagram.
Okay. And what is your handle on Instagram so people can find you, including us?
It's just hashtag Leah Lax.
Okay. I followed Leah. I did. Yes. And we always make sure to put all that stuff in our show notes. So it'll all be actually written out as well. So, Leah, thank you from the bottom of my heart, for just being so willing and giving us your time, and break a leg.
I can't wait. It's not my hands anymore, so I can just sit back and enjoy it. I'm really working hard right now.
Oh my gosh. And we'll stay in touch for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Take care. Have a great night. Enjoy the rest of the runs. Hopefully they're good.
Thank you for saving me from that anxiety.
You're welcome. Go Astros.
Go Astros.
Awesome.
Bye, Leah.
Bye-bye.